Ricky Rubio's time with the Cavs is done. Do the Cavs have to make a move now, or is the answer already on the roster? We'll answer that and more on today's Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That is $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. I am Chris Manning. That is Evan Dammarell. Thanks again to Jake Stevens, as always, for his work on the production side. Today's show is all about one Ricky Rubio. The Cavs have bought out his contract. He has issued a statement that, without really revealing specifics, which obviously his right, Ricky Rubio is leaving the NBA. Does not seem like he is going to play professional basketball again, at least in the NBA. We will see where his life, his career goes. All the best to Ricky. The Cavs have issued a statement. Kobe Altman praising him and thanking him and wishing him all the best. I think the whole NBA world is wishing Rubio this. We'll get to the basketball part of this later in the show. But, Evan, I think it's appropriate to start with the human side of it and really ask, like, when you saw this come through, you saw this news come through on Thursday morning, what was your initial reaction? Where's your head at with it?
So, I don't know if the title of this episode is also Bye Bye Ricky, but Chris titled this document Bye Bye Ricky, and this is before I get serious. Always makes me think of that episode of Pokemon when Ash releases his Butterfree, Bye Bye Butterfree. And just, if you know, you know. I don't think Chris knows, but
nope.
Maybe one day Chris Berman will go back and redub the OG run of the anime.
I'll just go watch Blade Runner 2049 again. That's how I cope with things.
Is this your new movie of the week?
It's one of them, yes. But let's talk about Ricky Rubio.
It's a good pick.
That doesn't matter.
But on a more serious note, I wasn't surprised that it kind of boiled down to this. I know it was in the ether, mostly from Jake Fisher, of Yahoo Sports, that the Cavs were looking to move Rubio heading up to the deadline because he did have that salary, which, is a little bit more movable for a rotation caliber player if the Cavs are able to get someone to bite on it. It did have the caveat of not being fully guaranteed next season, which, could be an incentive for a team to take on that contract. But like Fisher kind of made it clear that whoever acquires Rubio is likely going to buy him out just because it just seems like there's no indications of him returning to the NBA. And when I asked JB Bickerstaff about this once or twice, he's just like, yeah, it's like cordial texting conversations and like there's no update at this time, or like there's no really. And right on the Cavs and right on Ricky to prioritize his mental health and make sure that he does right by him. And I think the Cavs did handle this, a very delicate situation, well. But my initial reaction to the news was I wasn't shocked, just because I think the Cavs just weren't really ever going to find a trade partner unless they gave up one of the few legitimate assets they have left in their hopper. And in order to do that, just to kind of move off of a guy who hasn't reported and you're trying to replace him, it just made more sense to me logistically just to agree to a buyout. We, again, don't know how much money was left on the table, so how much more financial wiggle room Cleveland gets out of this, it remains to be seen. But for now, I wasn't surprised. I think maybe, just seeing the news, though, is still sad. I think just because Ricky was kind of a part of this very sudden turnaround the Cavs had. He was a very fun story until he tore his ACL against New Orleans, and unfortunately, that was kind of the flashpoint where he collapsed, his career collapsed. I think if he didn't tear his ACL, he was regressing back to the mean, but maybe he's still happy, healthy, functional NBA player Ricky Rubio. But I think him saying he's retiring from basketball just tracks with what he said before. When he's ready to hang it up, he's going to stay in Spain and be with his family. And I think it's just presented an opportunity. One, he hasn't played in a while, and two, doesn't seem to have any intentions of returning to the court anytime soon. So yeah, it's sad, but not a surprise. What was your reaction?
Very much the same. I think this was coming. I think, I don't know, I can't tell you right now exactly how much activity there was on the trade market. All the reporting is that they explored the possibility of it. And Chris Fedor has it in his story today that they determined that the most advantageous option for them was the wording he used would have been to buy him out. They get some wiggle room under that. All that matters, we'll get to that. I think for me, I go back to two things came into my mind today. Well, three. First is I go back to the night in New Orleans, and that's going to be for me the night he tore his ACL right after Christmas will be a crossroads moment of Ricky Rubio's career and life, I think, forever. He was chasing a triple-double in that game. I don't know if there's really a reason for him to still be out there. Other than that, maybe maybe this all turns out differently if he just isn't on the court at that moment. I've thought that. That's not totally fair, but I've thought that. Secondly, I think we knew how serious this was, at least I thought I did, when he didn't play for Spain. If you know anything about Ricky Rubio and you know what his basketball journey has been, it has been so much about Spain more than the NBA. So I was thinking about that, and just really for him to get to this point, and on top of that, you should take this seriously. And thirdly, I thought about Kevin Love, who I don't know if he's talked about that at all, but you want to talk about someone who's been so public with his mental health struggles and battles as well, and been an advocate for people. It's not our place to know their conversations, but those guys bonded when they were here together. They bonded obviously first in Minnesota. What Kevin was someone I thought about just in the sense of what was he thinking today when he saw this, and what has it been like for him to see someone that he played with and knows so well think in just that. And I thought about how the league in general just so much respects Rubio, that this is going to be one of those guys that leaves that I don't think you're going to see a single person say anything bad about Ricky Rubio on the way out.
No, nor should they. I don't think anyone should ever say anything bad about Ricky Rubio on the way out. And he is by and far, I think, the favorite teammate of like Donovan Mitchell's or Kevin Love, as you had noted. Like, he's a guy that a lot of people just kind of rallied around and became like attached to in a way. Like, not even just those two, whether it's like Darius Garland or Evan Mobley or Jared Allen in the capacity. Like, we talk about adults in the room. Like, Rubio was the adult in the room for that young Cavs squad when they had that sudden resurgence in Evan Mobley's rookie season. And he also was just like a functional player. Like, the way he played on the floor was just infectious for Cleveland. And I think that's just like hard to replicate. I don't think you ever really can. And it just makes it special in that sense. And yeah, I just think maybe like, I don't want to say that's the juice the Cavs are missing now, but it certainly does seem to make a bit of a difference just like looking back at everything, just all things considered.
I think you can make a real case that the most joy the Cavs have had as a team, and look, we're not in the locker room, this is just purely just like guessing from the outside, but the most joy they had the last couple of years was between August 3rd, the day they traded for him when they gave up Taurean Prince a 2022 second in cash to bring him in, through December 28th when he tears his ACL. That is not a long time. That is 1, 2, 3, 4. That's basically 5 months. 3 months of basketball. That's not a long time. And yet there's a reason they traded him, and we're like immediately very clear about wanting to bring him back. There's a reason that I don't think that they're handling this so carefully. It's that this is a beloved guy that I think the locker room and everyone in that team, from J.B. Bickerstaff to Kobe Altman to Donovan Mitchell, who also played with him in Utah, to Darius Garland, to anyone who interacted with that guy, I think is going to miss him and respects that guy to a degree that I think is rare. There is a certain joy and pride and just positivity that came from that Rubio run. That to me is, I think, like his legacy in a lot of ways, is just like how he carried himself, as much as how good he was and all the comparisons and his peaks. That to me is going to be his basketball legacy. The vibes that he brought to wherever he was.
Like you said, positivity. One of the most iconic Rubio moments was when he told a teammate in Minnesota to fix their face and smile more. And he was being, it's not like a rude guy at the bar telling a female bartender you should smile more often or something like that. Instead, no, he's just genuine, like, yeah, you should be happy. And we're like, hey, this is like, we're living like a really great life here. Like, everything's awesome. So yeah, it's just weird to think. Like, we all kind of saw this coming, I think, when, like you said, he stepped away from Spanish national team play. But still surprising even when it hits, I guess.
Coming up next, we're going to go through our favorite Rubio Cavs moments. I have one immediately that comes to mind that is imprinted on my head, and we'll also start getting into what are the mechanics of replacing Ricky Rubio's roster spot, how they go from here. That's up next. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Around New Year's, we get obsessed with how to change ourselves instead of just expanding on what we're already doing right. Maybe you finally organize one part of your space and you want to tackle another. Or you're taking your supplements every morning and now you want to actually eat a good breakfast too. Therapy can help you find your strengths so you can ditch the extreme resolutions and make changes that really stick. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Celebrate the progress you've made, and if you're considering therapy, I can tell you as someone who's been going to therapy for a long time, it's really beneficial. It has helped me find new avenues in my life, so consider it if you're considering how to improve yourself or work on what is already there this year. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Again, that deal is 10% off your first month. All right, we're back here. Chris Manning and Evan Dammarell with you. Best Rubio moments, Evan. We'll do Cavs ones because, other shows, Locked on Wolves, Locked on Suns, I know we'll talk about him a little bit. There's a lot of different ways you could go with Ruben Escret. The Spanish national team in its own right is going to be full of stuff. I was doing some Googling today. I do believe he's actually the record holder for the most points scored against Team USA in a FIBA game, so that's a good bar trivia question for anyone out there. Ricky Rubio, fun fact, if that's in fact correct. If not, I didn't tell you that that's a fact. But what's your favorite Rubio moment? What comes to mind for you?
I think it has to be when just like you and I were shocked, actually, like when the Cavs first traded for him, they sent out Taurean Prince, and Prince by no means is like a perfect player. He is flawed in a lot of different ways, but the Cavs still had a pretty clear need of perimeter shooting and just depth on the perimeter, and Taurean Prince is that like pseudo 3-4 that kind of fit the mold of what the Cavs needed from that position, and they flipped him for a backup point guard who wasn't awesome statistically, was kind of a net negative when he was on the floor in the season before he came to Cleveland, and he just kind of came in and was like lightning in a bottle right away. Like, I think just for me, I'm like, I was happy to eat crow on that situation and just be proven wrong, because Rubio was the ideal backup point guard for Darius Garland in Evan Mobley's rookie season, and like really gave it to the Cavs and really stepped up when Garland was dealing with a litany of issues. And it's unfortunate it was cut so short. But just that moment for me, like when I was proven wrong, was like one of my top moments with him.
To me, there's one answer to this. It's 37 points, 8 of 8 from 3 at MSG against the Knicks. That was Ricky Rubio unconscious. That was, I think, in some ways, the peak of the Rubio Cleveland experience when the magic was just fully there. I was watching the clips again today, and Darius Garland looks like much younger. Like he looks like a different person now.
Well, the uniforms are odd too, because that was the pre-rebrand.
Yes, the gold's different, all that stuff. But Rubio's just out here coming off of like very soft Mobley screens. He's hitting threes over Derrick Rose on the move. He's everywhere on the floor. Everyone's got masks on too because it was that time in the world. And he's just absolutely cooking. He's hitting. He had a sidestep, like one-footed three over Quentin Grimes, and I still am just unsure of A, why he took it, and B, like how he made it. I just can't really believe that he pulled that off. And then if you go to the end of the game, the post-game interview to me is like stuck in my head. I don't even remember what he said, but I just remember Darius Garland like screaming behind him and like yelling into the microphone Ricky Rubio's name. There's just like the joy of just that group, and when Rubio's cooking like that at MSG is just for me like it is without question the peak of the Rubio Cavs era. All right, and the mechanics of replacing him. There is obviously like they've already kind of had to replace him basketball wise. Like that's kind of already happened to some degree. The reporting out there, mostly from Chris Fedor, a little bit from others, is they could look to sign someone. They've cleared some money under the luxury tax. Again, we don't know exactly how much, but they've cleared some money from the luxury tax. And on top of that, they could just convert Craig Porter Jr.'s contract. So now, they have a little more wiggle room. They only had $750,000 under luxury tax, so they have conceivably some money. They have some mid-level exception money left they could still spend. And they have Craig Porter Jr. There are trades they could look to make. I don't know if that's the exact option for backup point guard, if that's the move they would make. But they don't have, Evan, I think, a ton of resources to fill the roster spot and get to place. Now, and there also are 10-day contracts Friday, so maybe we just see a Band-Aid, someone signed to a 10-day, and that's it for now. But the mechanics of this are going to be, I think, be pretty straightforward. I wouldn't expect even anything as drastic as like when the Cavs traded for Rajon Rondo the year that Rubio tore his ACL, if people remember when they did that.
Yeah. So, I mean, for context, they did trade for Rondo just because Rubio tore his ACL. Garland was out with back issues, and the Cavs were struggling heavily without him or just to kind of guide them. And it got really murky and really messy, and that's where you saw Rondo come in. But I just don't think the Cavs are really in a rush. I saw Fedor did report, and I think it makes sense because, I mean, I think everyone who's just kind of like keeping a pulse of this team or has connections in the team just kind of knows, like, yeah, the Cavs aren't really an organization to rush or overreact. I think not having Darius Garland stings, but if you're able to ride out the tide of this week, you have that long trip to Paris next week, and then he could technically be back the following Friday after, so you could ride this out. But you also don't really have to put the baby out before the bathwater because Craig Porter Jr., I did the math the other day, based on Cleveland's schedule, he won't hit that 50-game mark on a two-way contract until after the trade deadline. So, like, if the Cavs go out and make a move, they can do that then, or they could just wait till after the trade deadline, depending on, do they consolidate the roster a bit more? Like, do they move Dean Wade plus, like, Damian Jones or Ty Jerome to go get a player? And do they still have, like, 2 open roster spots after that, and they still maintain that flexibility to get, like, a buyout guy or something like that? Like, I think the Cavs have options, but I don't think they're as pressed just because Craig Porter Jr. really has stepped up for them in really impactful ways whenever he does get minutes. And also just like the Cavs are playing the Wizards 2 nights. They're playing the Spurs on Sunday. They fly out to play Brooklyn in Paris. And then I think they still have some pretty suboptimal teams with maybe like a good game or two after they get they're back home against Chicago after that.
Yep. On MLK, so like, they're the late game on the MLK Day slate across the league. They're like the 7:30 tip that day.
So like I think the Cavs could still again ride out this storm and not really have to worry about it. And then Darius Garland could conceivably be right back in their laps, and they just keep rolling with Mitchell just running the starting point until Garland can come back.
I think it's going to be a lot of do that with Craig Porter. But I wouldn't. I think just in terms of getting yourself depth and finding something, I wouldn't shock me if they.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I don't know really who's on the 10-day market. Like, is it Austin Rivers they signed to a 10-day deal or something like that, just to add some quote unquote depth?
Well, he's busy podcasting. I would look at like G League guys. I'll tell you some names that you could look to, including an internal one that's technically internal that I don't think is a super an NBA prospect, but a name they're at least familiar with. We'll touch on some of those names, and we'll talk about Craig Porter Jr. a little more because he's worth talking about more after this. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 moneyline bet. That is $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same game parlays. You can find bets in their new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in their new Explore tab, in their parlay hub, and much, much more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet a layup. They will have Cavs Wizards odds. They'll have Cavs Spurs odds for Sunday. They'll have Cavs Nets odds when the Cavs are over in France. They'll have every Cavs game NBA awards as well. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet a layup. Again, that offer is $150 in bonus bets. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, so G League options if you wanted to go that route. number one, you do have Sharife Cooper, who's not on a two-way. He's a point guard. He's a body that you know. He's not exactly, I think, what I think makes the most sense, but I could see it. As far as the leaders, here are the 10 players in assists. I don't know how many. Some of these guys might be in two ways. I'm not sure. This isn't like marked or anything on their stats page, so keep that in mind as I say some of these names. Marquise Noel is the leader in assists, 10.2 a game. Jason Preston, personally, just signed Jason Preston for me at 8.7 assists is second. Brandon Goodwin, J.D. Davidson, 8.5. Alfred Payton at 8.2. There's your top five. Shaq Harrison is another vet is at 6. You could go with some of those vets. You could go with Sharife Cooper. Mac McClung is another guard in the G League as well if you wanted to go that kind of route. But I think really those kind of guys would be, Evan, I think those guys would just be placeholders. Those guys would be very much just eat up some innings, maybe in case Darius Garland twists an ankle or Craig Porter hurts himself, or you need another guard because Karras is hurt or Sam Merrill's wrist is bothering him. Like, that's the kind of guy, that's the quality I think you're looking for if you're going to go 10 days as a Friday.
Yeah, and so like Marquise Noel is on a two-way with the Raptors, so that's one you have to kind of look elsewhere on. I don't hate the Sharife Cooper pickup, but if I were looking at guys on the charge, I think like, again, I don't think there's like a pressing need for depth just because you have Mitchell, LeVert, Porter Jr., even Strus, who can handle ball handling responsibilities. I'd rather look at Zaire Smith instead and see like if that's a viable option for Cleveland. That there's dudes that the Cavs could definitely take a look at, and yeah, it's just a run-of-the-mill stuff. Or you look at it outside, like, are there free agents that have just been kind of trying to stay healthy and competitive? Like, I know Isaiah Thomas is always tweeting that he's looking for job opportunities whenever a point guard position comes up in question. So if the Cavs want to get into that hashtag slow grind,
sure,
maybe they look into that.
Sure, that would
joke,
be,
of course.
That like honestly, let's just kumbaya. The world needs more kumbaya. Maybe just bring back Isaiah Thomas. Zaire Smith, for whatever this is worth, 3 games with the Chargers in the regular season so far this year, 8.3 points, shooting 53% from the field, 20% from 3. So let me ask you this. You seem to me to think you just wouldn't want another point. You would just say, like, get me a wing, get me just like another body, as opposed to another guard. Why does your brain go that direction versus going a more 1-for-1 direction?
I just think that like we talked about this the other day about like when it came to like trading Dean Wade or whatever. The Cavs have like more of a, at least to me, clearer need to upgrade on like bigger forwards or just forwards that can provide 3-point shooting. And I'm not saying that like Zaire Smith is perfect, but I think he's showing a little bit of juice with the Charge that maybe it's worth a long stab and look at, especially if you want to look at the in-house options with your open roster spots, whether it's on a 10-day deal and it doesn't work out, I guess back down to the Charge, or you rinse and repeat from there because he's not two-way eligible because of his NBA experience at this point. So those are stabs you could take. But just for me, like, again, like I think Mitchell's done a pretty good job stepping up for the Cavs when they needed him to. I think LeVert's done a good job. I think Craig Porter Jr., of course, has done a very good job. To me, the logical path is you see if you can make an upgrade elsewhere on the roster, whether that's just mostly like the bigger rebounding 3 and rebounding wing that you can get that can play the 3 and the 4. And then you just convert Craig Porter Jr. to a regular NBA contract just based on the Kobe Altman special and just like maneuvering like the limitations of not getting into the salary tax. And you just move forward from there because I think they're fine. Like they've shown strength without Garland and Mobley, and they played without Rubio all season. Like to me, I'm like he hasn't been here all year, so it's not like it's like a super pressing need now.
I think short term, I still might just want another guard because like I just think you're already tilted towards this way where you just need you got close to not having like any healthy point guards, and Darius is still out. I might just want for the short term, like, be it Sharife Cooper, be it somebody else, just give me someone for 2 10-day contracts just to like bridge the gap. They get to go to Paris, maybe, like good for them. That would be cool. Like to get a stay in a hotel paid for by an NBA team in Paris and be there at the second ever NBA game there. Like that's cool. You could do that, and I think that would be acceptable for the short term. I think long term, the move is just convert Craig Porter Jr. Maybe he's not in the rotation long term. I think that's very possible, but I think you could just get into a world where you bridge the gap at the backup point guard, and then you start looking for trades. You start looking at other veterans. There's not a ton of NBA free agents that are I was texting with a friend today who texted me some names, and I'm going to read you these names that he sent me because he was like, they should sign one of these guys. Montrezl Harrell, TJ Warren, Jeremy Lamb, Justice Winslow, Will Barton, Michael Carter-Williams, and John Wall. There's a reason none of those guys are on NBA teams. There's a reason that TJ Warren, as good as he was in the bubble, just like it hasn't worked, and he's not on a team now. Like there's just not, when you get to this point in the year, I think like veteran guys are free agents for a reason. I don't think you can look at those guys. It's the same reason buyout guys don't really work usually. They're probably not as good as you think they are based on their name value at this point.
Yeah, and like when I talked about the Cavs, like looking at the buyout market or whatever, that's more so the case of like, they bring in like a veteran just to kind of keep them steady and like maybe has a little bit of tread on the tire, like somehow Tristan Thompson does, just to kind of give them a little bit of juice they need him to, or he has like an Eddie Tavares like career defining game at the very last game of the regular season for Cleveland. But regardless, I'm interested to see what they do. I don't know, like just the way this team seemingly operates, they're very patient and pragmatic with their approach when it comes to stuff. So I'm curious to see like how they approach this, how they tackle it, and if there even is like wholesale change between now and when they play on Friday.
Cavs will talk about this for the first time, aside from prepared statements Friday. There's a shoot-around Friday. I said JB will talk about it, then the players will talk about it, I'm sure, and we'll see if we hear from anyone else. I wouldn't expect this. Oh, that's my bad. I misread the email that I got then. Then they'll talk about it Friday before the game. They'll talk about it Friday after the game. We'll talk about it Sunday, I'm sure. And so everyone has talked about it that they'd like to hear from. Particularly if anyone, I'd say I want to hear from Donovan Mitchell, who played from him and with him two places, who knows him well. That's kind of the guy I want to see what Donovan has to say as kind of the statesman of the team. And see if, I mean, I don't, maybe Donovan's talked to him. Maybe they FaceTimed or something. Who knows? We're going to end there, though. We'll be back after Cavs Wizards, and then we'll get you ready for the Sunday game against Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs, who are battling with the Bucks right now, which is pretty fun. Check out Locked On Browns if you want to get ready for the last Browns game of the regular season. And check out Locked On Guardians for all that. All kinds of great Cleveland stuff in your feeds if you want it. Thanks again to Evan. Thanks again to Jake Stevens. Talk to you guys next time.